former US President Donald Trump is to appear in a Manhattan criminal court anytime now. 35,000 police personnel have been deployed in Manhattan to ensure that there are no clashes between pro-Trump supporters and anti-Trump protesters. More than 1,000 New York Police Department personnel, 1,000 police officers from Trump Towers to Manhattan Court. They've been deployed. Donald Trump will become the first US president to be indicted in a criminal case. We are getting you live images from New York City, from the Trump Tower to the Manhattan Criminal Court, where former US President Donald Trump will be indicted at 11:45 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Donald Trump is the 45th American president and the first ever to be indicted. So what does this mean? He will drive from the Trump Tower in Manhattan to the Manhattan Criminal Court anytime now. And you're looking at those live images. There are pro-Trump supporters and anti-Trump protesters. One of those protesters you see there wearing an orange jumpsuit, saying that Trump will finally be sent to jail. But from all accounts, he will not be sent to jail today. Donald Trump will not be handcuffed. A mugshot is unlikely to be taken, but he will be fingerprinted the moment he reaches the courthouse. We are told there are 34 charges against him. They will be read out. Once that process happens, it's likely to be a 20-minute to a half-an-hour long process is what we are being told. He flies back to Florida, to Palm Beach, to his plush house in Florida, and that's where he's likely to make a statement. But the question remains, will there be clashes between pro and anti-Trump camps in New York? Trump, of course, himself, he's called it political persecution. His team insists that if these charges, if at all, the charges are still in a sealed cover, but they say whatever the charges are from information in public domain, they appear to be misdemeanor charges that are being falsely elevated to felony. What does that mean? This is a huge story. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We'll get you the latest from New York and Florida. But first, as always, the headlines. Bengal continues to be on the edge. Fresh stone pelting in Hooghly. The governor visits violence hit areas. Mamata Banerjee accuses the BJP of bringing in outsiders to incite clashes. The Ministry of Home Affairs has stepped in, seeks a report. Rahul Gandhi's first reaction after getting bail, questions the BJP on intimidating judiciary. Rahul Gandhi snaps back, asks a journalist why does he peddle BJP's lines. Agadi split wide open over Modi's degree controversy. Uddhav Thackeray questions the secrecy over Prime Minister Narendra Modi's qualifications. NCP's Ajit Pawar calls it a non-issue. Seven killed in a massive avalanche in Sikkim's Nathula. Several tourists feared trapped. Army and the Border Roads Organization carry out rescue operations. Former US President Donald Trump to be charged on more than 30 counts. No handcuffs for Trump. He's unlikely to be jailed. Former US President Donald Trump is in New York. He will be traveling to the Manhattan Criminal Court shortly, where he will be indicted in a 2016 case where he's alleged to have paid $130,000 to a porn star through a fixer to prevent her from writing a tell-all book about an alleged affair they had in 2006. Donald Trump has denied the charges. He says he does not know Stormy Daniels. He says the judge is against him. He insists that the case is politically motivated. Much more on this big story and what this means. But first, let's get you the latest ground report from New York.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump arrived in New York City on Monday, walking into Trump Tower ahead of his historic arraignment on Tuesday to face charges stemming from a probe into hush money paid to a porn star before the 2016 election. Security was high outside the Manhattan courthouse where Trump is likely to be fingerprinted and photographed Tuesday afternoon. At a news conference, New York City Mayor Eric Adams warned protesters to behave themselves or face the consequences.
While there may be some rabble-rousers thinking about coming to our city tomorrow, our message is clear and simple. Control yourselves. New York City is our home, not a playground for your misplaced anger. As always, we will not allow violence or vandalism of any kind. And if one is caught participating in any act of violence, they will be arrested and held accountable, no matter who you are.
There he is!
Trump left his Florida home midday Monday to cheering supporters as his motorcade drove by to take him to his private plane at the airport, which flew him to New York. The Republican who's seeking to regain the presidency in 2024 is the first sitting or former U.S. president to face criminal charges. A grand jury voted to indict him last week. Trump was due to surrender at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office on Tuesday before appearing before a judge where he's expected to plead not guilty. The specific charges have yet to be disclosed. Trump has said he's innocent, and his allies have portrayed the charges as politically motivated. The Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, who's leading the prosecution, is a Democrat. Former New York State Deputy Attorney General Danya Perry explains what will likely happen inside the courtroom.
Mr. Trump will be brought to the courthouse on the 15th floor of the criminal court in Manhattan, and he will appear in front of a judge who will then tell him what the charges are against him, ask him how he pleads, and will set, in this case, there will certainly be no bail, and so he will release the former president on his own recognizance and will set some schedule for the next court appearance and potentially for discovery and for motion practice. And that's fairly typical. Of course, in some ways, this is a first of its kind. There will be a Secret Service detail. There will be a lot of security and law enforcement presence to make sure that there is no violence and no disruptions.
Trump is expected to fly back to Florida after Tuesday's arraignment and deliver primetime remarks at his Mar-a-Lago estate.
And India Today's Lenka White joins us live from New York. Also with me is India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan for more on this. Geeta, the first of its kind. Donald Trump, of course, says this is political persecution. But what more can you tell us about how this case proceeds from this point?
Well, a very interesting day in New York, Gaurav. We will be tracking what really happens over there, but there are a few things that are going to happen. Now, former President Donald Trump is going to reach the court. There are going to be photographers. Around 5 photographers have been identified who will be allowed inside the court for a few minutes, more than a few minutes, in fact, to take photographs. And then they'll be they'd be sent out before the arraignment begins. There are going to be no mug shots of the president. There certainly will be only photographs that would be allowed. No mug shots. He will not be handcuffed, as we've already reported. And then after the arraignment, the former president will then go back to Florida, and there is where he is going to hold a televised address.
Stay with me for a moment, Geeta. I want to bring in Lenka. On this, Lenka, you're on ground. What's happening? Is there an apprehension there could be clashes between Trump supporters and those who are opposed to him? Lenka, can you hear me? Okay, give me a moment as I try and reestablish that link. There are a large number of journalists on ground. Also with me is Ambassador Navtej Sarna, former Indian ambassador to the United States. Puneet Ahluwalia is former candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. He's a Republican supporter. Prakash Shah is a former national trustee of the Democratic National Convention, a Biden supporter. I want to quickly once again try and bring in Lenka White. Lenka, if you can hear us, what's happening on ground right now?
You know, on the ground, the atmosphere is really tense. There are so many people here. It's really hard to know and see what is going on. There are many journalists, many Trump supporters, but also some people against Trump. Everyone is screaming, they're loud, and police people are all the time harassing you for standing in places you shouldn't be standing in. There are also many barricades all around me, so many streets are actually closed and you cannot get through them, so you have to walk around instead of going straight somewhere. The atmosphere is very interesting and everyone is patiently waiting for Donald Trump to arrive. The times have been changing. Some were saying he will arrive at 11. Now it's almost 1, and there are new reports that he might arrive at 2 p.m.
Okay.
So it's really unclear, but everyone is waiting.
And we'll get you multiple shots. Lenka, stay with me for a moment. We'll get you multiple shots. We'll show you what's happening at the Trump Tower. We'll show you what's happening at the Manhattan Criminal Court. But Puneet Ahluwalia, how is this case politically motivated if money was actually paid and the person who paid the money has said so?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate what we're having. It's a political stunt. It's a circus that's going on. And I think it's going to further divide both parties, and we'll see more tit for tat. And this is not good, and this is not healthy for democracy. And I think this is all to incite and excite President Trump's base. And they realize and recognize that if President Trump becomes the nominee, he is likely will lose the election because we've seen in last election cycle, a lot of Republican candidates endorsed by President Trump lost. So I think this is more trumped up to excite and incite Trump's base. But on the other side, we've seen President Clinton. This didn't translate the same way. Hillary Clinton did the same thing in the Russian dossier. So this is more to get President Trump and, more importantly, take away the people's attention from the economy, the inflation, the seriousness of the crime that is.
You're calling it diversionary
or
tactics.
in Chicago.
Okay, you're calling it diversionary tactics. Ambassador Sarna, Donald Trump has hit out at the judge. He's called the judge names, saying this venue is not correct. The judge is biased. He wants it to be moved to Staten Islands. Does that not put Trump on a sticky wicket in court? How do you see this development?
Frankly, I don't think whatever former President Trump is saying is surprising to anybody, because there are two narratives here. One is that nobody is above the law, and the second narrative, obviously coming from Trump and his supporters, is that this is a politically biased enactment of the entire case. So I think this will have to play itself out. But for the moment, I think the fact is that a grand jury has indicted the former president, and then he is to be presented for being what the Americans call being booked and arraigned. And then we will see what exactly the indictment is going to be once the sealed envelope is opened, and how the judge treats that and how the defense tries to counter it. So this is, I think, just the first step. It's not going to be the last. There are other cases which are pending, which could possibly come up on President Trump, the January 6th case, the Mar-a-Lago documents case, the Georgia case. So I think you're going to have more of this as the next election builds up.
And Ambassador Sarna, before I bring in Mr. Prakasha, Ambassador Sarna, does this impact his presidential race in your view? Does it adversely impact him?
Sorry, I couldn't get your question.
Does this adversely impact Donald Trump?
Of course it does impact him. At the moment, he will try to take advantage of it. And you will see it in the Mar-a-Lago speech tonight. And he will try to arouse all his supporters and say that, he already is electioneering on a narrative of persecution. And this is going to tremendously strengthen that. And the other possible Republican candidates are going to get boxed in. They will either have to support him or they will have to oppose him, which is going to be very difficult after this. And I think everybody has already started humming support, with the possible exception of Ron DeSantis.
Yes.
So he will try to use it as an advantage. Let's see how far that goes.
Okay. Prakash Shah, Trump supporters and some of those in his legal team say that this case is one, politically motivated. Two, the alleged affair took place in 2006, the alleged payment in 2016. If records were falsified, it is a case of misdemeanor and not felony.
In my opinion, there is a lifetime of criminality coming from Trump that is catching up with him. And so we can get into the technicalities of the actual charge. We haven't seen the actual charge. Once we see the actual charge, we can try to assess how strong or good the case is. However, the fact that not only the sums were paid, but those were later booked as business expense and possibly deducted on their taxes is where the criminality is coming from. So the fraud case of using this money is paid, which were deemed as a campaign expense, which again has to be proved, but hopefully they have that proof.
Okay.
So if that proof is there and it's a campaign expense, but then they're turning around and calling it a business expense, and then further on deducting it on their taxes, then it's a tax fraud simple case.
Okay,
and,
so we need to see what are these 34 charges that are read out. As Ambassador Sarna was also pointing out, it's in a sealed cover as of now. It's only at 11:45 when Donald Trump reaches the court and is fingerprinted. Will those charges be read out? We are told he will plead not guilty. But Geeta, the world is watching. Trump supporters are calling this theater of the absurd. But would Trump be looking at an opportunity in this adversity, as Ambassador Sarna also points out?
Well, Gaurav, Trump is known to turn adversity into political opportunities, which is what you'll see over here also. Like Ambassador Sarna said, in his televised address from Florida, he is going to make that point, and it's going to be quite evident with the poll numbers. Now, pulling out all the poll numbers from various sources, we've been seeing that his popularity is on the rise ever since the trial, the case and the controversy. So, and we're seeing a lot of Trump supporters really come out backing Donald Trump, and he is leading in the Republican nominees list. So there is a lot that Trump is banking on when it comes to at least getting a relief. What we're looking at from the lawyers of Trump, and that I've been listening to and looking at all the reports, is that one, he is going to plead not guilty, but they're also looking at a motion to dismiss the case itself. Let's wait and see what really happens. If not, the defense is going to file an appeal too. So it is going to be a tough battle fought today. But how long will it take? Like Ambassador Sarna said, Gaurav, there are many other cases. Let's wait and see. There are two very crucial things that are going to take place even as these trials cases continue. That is Republican presidential nominee, the primaries, and then the presidential race.
Okay, Lenka, on ground zero, we are told 35,000 police officers have been deployed. The New York Police Department, we are also told that the Federal Bureau of Investigation and of course the US Secret Service, his security detail. But is there a requirement? Is there an apprehension that what happened at the Hill in 2021 could happen today?
You know, that's a great question. As you mentioned, everyone is sort of worried that this could be repeating. So they are making sure that they have enough police people all around. They are even afraid of actually thinking about this. All I can say that I have seen here many police people. There are about like 10 right now next to me guarding this whole atmosphere. You know, it seems like they have it so far under control, but I think it's probably will get more brutal after the indictment, after the people actually get to know what will be happening and once he's arriving, because many more protesters are actually on the way. But yes, there are many police people, and so far it seems it's under control.
Okay. Ambassador Sarna, Trump supporters say since this information was made public, they've been able to raise close to $8 million for his presidential campaign. Prima facie, and you've looked at all the information that's coming in. The indictment still remains in a sealed cover. The actual charges in a sealed cover. Is the prosecution on a sticky wicket, as Trump supporters point out?
Well, the prosecution is going to do its job. The district attorney has done a fair, solid amount of work for the investigation. Of course, he's a Democrat, so that opens him up in the bipartisan debate to accusations of being politically motivated. But the DA does not bring the person to a grand jury until he has a fairly good amount of evidence, and the grand jury does not indict the person until they have seen evidence. So the grand jury consists of a normal jury, and they must see evidence before. So you can presume that there is a certain amount of evidence. Now, what that leads to, does it lead to simply misdemeanors? Or does it actually amount to what under American law is termed as felony, which requires a longer imprisonment and longer possible prison sentences? But yes, until all that happens, Trump is going to use this massively for fundraising. And even when the indictments came in, he immediately got more funds.
Yes.
So after tonight's speech, there will be more fundraising, and that will give him a further lead in the Republican primary list. This is several things going to be happening at the same time.
Very interesting to watch out for. And Prakash Shah, is the case impacted by the statute of limitation as per New York laws? The alleged offense took place in 2016. He's actually being indicted in 2023. I'm giving you some of the arguments that are being put forward by his legal team, sir.
There is an issue of statute of limitation. However, it is not applicable if there is a fraud attachment. So if there is a tax deduction, fraud, also remember that there were multiple payments to multiple women. It's not just one person. And so right there were two women. There were also payments made to National Enquirer, which caught and killed a number of stories like this. And all of that happened around that time. And so that's where the multiplicity of these counts are coming from. So I think it is, again, until we see the details,
yes,
we don't know exactly what has been developed and how is he going to be charged and what the details are. But there is a fairly solid evidence and case that is there.
Okay, you're saying there is solid evidence, but you're also conceding that there is it may be impacted by the statute of limitation. Puneet Ahluwalia, is the Trump nervous? Why target the judge? Why target the venue? Donald Trump, he's called the judge partisan. He's saying this venue is unfair. Why fear that he may not get a fair trial here?
I'm not affiliated with the Trump camp. I'm more focused on the condition and the future of our nation and the politics that is being played and democracy. The Constitution is being eroded and foundationally being challenged and changed by the progressive liberal agenda which is in place. So this is very concerning. I believe, as we've discussed before, that President Trump takes every adversity and translates into a successful money machine for himself and for his candidacy for president. At the same time, I'm very happy for the New Yorkers, especially the shopkeepers, who have enough police to stop the crime spree that's going on or has been going on, and it'll be at least at a standstill. So the mayor and the public prosecutor is doing their job at least for one day.
Okay.
So this is, again, a big circus, and it's unfortunate. And I believe a lot will translate in after. This is an ongoing saga. So this is to basically captivate the American public and the world to see how our democracy is being destroyed.
Mr. Shah, would you quickly want to respond? The Republicans say this is a circus, and the world is seeing how American democracy is being destroyed or how courts are being misused.
Yes, it is Trump that is making it into a circus. Otherwise, it's a legal issue and lawyers need to debate it and the judge and the jury have to decide. But Trump is making it into a circus, and that's unfortunate. On the issue of politicizing, anything you do with Trump is political. he is going to gain Republican votes, and he may end up a nominee as a consequence, because more Republicans will be wanting to support him. But by the same token, he is losing votes on the other side, meaning as soon as he becomes a nominee, he will be faced with the general election. And in the general election, he's eroding votes at the same time. So, I mean, it's a very dichotomous situation where on one hand, he may be temporarily gaining, but only to lose later.
Ambassador Sarna, last word to you on this part of the show. How do you see this pan out? So it's advantage Trump as far as the Republicans are concerned, but what does this do to the fence sitters in the presidential elections in 2024, sir?
No, I think it is advantage Trump in terms of the immediate Republican fallout. But if he does become the nominee for the Republicans, which may look likely today, but there's a lot of stuff to happen over the next year or so.
Yes.
If he does become a nominee for the Republicans, then these indictments and arraignments will be a huge disadvantage. When he goes into debates with possibly with Biden, then this is going to be a huge amount of baggage to overcome. So that's where it is at the moment.
Okay, we'll be tracking this story very, very closely. For joining me here on this India Today special broadcast, many thanks. I need to slip into a quick break at this stage. But when we come back at 11 o'clock, remember 11:45 is when Donald Trump has to be in that New York criminal court, in that Manhattan criminal court. He has to move from Trump Tower. That's likely to happen anytime around 11. And we have reporters on ground at the Trump Tower. We have reporters on ground at the criminal court. We'll get you that big story and the best images here on India Today. A quick break. Sakshi Batra comes up next with Business Today. Stay tuned.
One way to do up your home or your office is to just keep it simple, to keep it minimalist.